Welcome to our deep dive on habits. We're going to be looking at James Clear's Atomic Habits. It's packed with insights on how habits work. And you know how to actually change them. Have you ever felt like you're putting in the work, but not seeing the results? Maybe understanding habits can help.
Yeah, that feeling of being stuck, it's something Clear addresses head on. He actually starts the book with a story about himself. He had a serious injury from a baseball accident. It was a long road to recovery. But what's fascinating is how he used these tiny, consistent habits to recover. And he eventually even became an academic All-American.
So even after a major setback, small changes over time helped him reach a huge goal. It's like that saying, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard.
Exactly. And Clear doesn't just tell inspiring stories. He digs into the science. He talks about the problem with focusing just on goals. We tend to think, if I achieve this goal, then I'll be happy. But then what happens after you reach the goal? Often it's right back to feeling dissatisfied, chasing the next thing.
Right, so it's like we're on this treadmill, constantly striving, but never truly arriving.
Precisely. Clear's alternative is to focus on systems instead of goals. So the system is the process, the daily actions. If you want to write a book, the goal is finishing the manuscript. But the system is writing every day.
Okay, so it's less about the destination and more about building the right vehicle to get there.
Right. He argues that if you get the system right, the results will take care of themselves. And that's where habits come in. Habits are the building blocks of our systems.
That makes sense. So how does Clear explain how habits actually work? Is there like some kind of formula?
There is. He breaks down habit formation into a 4-step process. Cue, craving, response, and reward. Think of it like a feedback loop in your brain.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us.
The cue is a trigger. That sets the whole process in motion. It could be anything, from a certain time of day to a specific location, even a particular emotion.
So like feeling stressed might be a cue to reach for chocolate.
Exactly. The cue triggers a craving, which is the motivational force behind the habit. We crave the feeling the habit will give us, whether it's a sense of calm from eating chocolate or the distraction of checking social media.
Then comes the response, the actual habit itself, right? Like actually eating the chocolate.
Yeah.
Or scrolling through Instagram.
You got it. And finally, the reward. This is the satisfying outcome that reinforces the habit. The reward could be the taste of chocolate, the feeling of being connected after seeing your friends' posts, or the stress relief from taking a break from work.
So our brains are constantly looking for these cues and predicting rewards. It's almost like a subconscious reward system.
It is. And the more we repeat the loop, cue, craving, response, reward, the stronger the habit becomes and the more automatic it feels. We do it without even thinking.
So to change a habit, we need to become aware of that loop. Is that where the habit scorecard comes in?
You're right on track. The habit scorecard is Clear's tool for building awareness. You simply list out your daily habits and mark whether they're positive, negative, or neutral.
It's like taking inventory of your day.
Exactly. But it's not about judging yourself. It's about becoming an observer of your own actions. Once you see the patterns, you can start to identify the cues that trigger your habits.
So if I notice that I always grab a cookie at 3 p.m., maybe the cue is actually feeling tired and needing an energy boost, not just the time on the clock.
That's a great insight. You're starting to see the underlying reasons behind your actions.
This is fascinating, but let's be honest. Just being aware of a bad habit doesn't make it magically disappear.
You're absolutely right. Awareness is the first step. But we need more than that to change ingrained behaviors. Clear provides a bunch of strategies. And a really powerful one is what he calls environment design.
Okay, let's unpack this. Environment design, does that mean like redecorating my living room to inspire better habits?
Not necessarily, though a calming environment can certainly help. The core idea is that our surroundings have a huge impact on our actions. Clear puts it this way: behavior is a function of the person in their environment.
So it's less about willpower and more about setting up our surroundings to support the habits we want.
Exactly. If you're trying to eat healthier, having a bowl of fruit on the counter is more effective than having a hidden stash of candy.
It's like making the good habit the easy choice.
Precisely. Clear gives the example of Oswald Knuckles, who uses a resetting the room strategy. He tidies up each space after using it, not just for cleanliness, but to prime it for the next action.
So if he's watching TV and then wants to work on a project afterward, he'll put away the remote fluff, the pillows, fold the blanket, so the room is set up for work, not relaxing.
Yes, it's about making the cues for your desired habits as obvious as possible. On the flip side, Making bad habits inconvenient can be just as effective.
Like, if I want to spend less time on my phone, I could delete social media apps. Or put my phone in a drawer when I need to focus.
Exactly. Increasing the friction makes the undesired behavior less appealing. So we've talked about the science of how habits work and how our environment can shape our actions. But there's another layer Clear explores that's really intriguing: the connection between habits and our identity.
Okay, so it's not just about what we do, but who we believe we are.
You hit the nail on the head. Clear argues that our habits shape our identity, but also our identity shapes our habits. It's a two-way street.
So if I see myself as a healthy person, I'm more likely to make healthy choices. But if I constantly indulge in unhealthy habits, that reinforces the belief that I'm not a healthy person.
Precisely. And this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to change a habit, it can be incredibly helpful to shift your mindset, to focus on becoming the kind of person who embodies that habit.
So if I want to write a book, it's not just about hitting a word count. It's about seeing myself as a writer, someone who shows up and does the work.
That's a powerful shift. And it can be really motivating, because it's no longer about achieving a specific outcome, but about aligning your actions with your desired identity.
This is really making me think about the stories I tell myself, about who I am and how that might be influencing my habits.
It's a fascinating concept, right?
Yeah.
And it opens up a whole new avenue for changing behavior.
Okay, so we've covered the science of habits, the power of our environment, and this mind-blowing connection to identity. It seems like Clear really dives deep into the psychology of it all. But does he offer any practical tools for actually putting these ideas into action?
He does. He provides a toolbox of strategies, including habit stacking and implementation intentions.
Let's dive into those. What is habit stacking?
It's a clever way to leverage your existing habits, to build new ones. You basically link a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
So you're using the existing habit as a cue to trigger the new one. I like that. It's like creating a domino effect of good habits. What about implementation intentions?
Implementation intentions add a level of specificity to your plan. Instead of saying, I'll exercise more, you create a specific plan. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I will go for a 30-minute run at 7 a.m. in the park.
It's like taking all the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
You're not just setting an intention, you're creating a clear roadmap for when, where, and how you'll take action. I could definitely use some more of that in my life.
We all could. Clear also provides insights on how to make habits more satisfying. After all, if a habit isn't enjoyable, we're less likely to stick with it, no matter how good our intentions are.
That makes sense. We'll have to delve into that in our next segment. But before we move on, I'm curious, what's been the most surprising or impactful takeaway for you from Atomic Habits so far?
What really struck me was how Clear ties together the science of habit formation with practical strategies that anyone can use. It's not just about understanding the theory. It's about having a framework and a set of tools to actually change your behavior.
I completely agree. It's one thing to know what you should be doing. It's another to have a clear path for how to actually make it happen. And that's what makes Atomic Habits so compelling.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful dive into the first part of Atomic Habits. We've explored the science, the psychology, and some practical tools for building better habits. In our next segment, we'll dig into those strategies for making habits more satisfying and explore some of the real-life examples Clear uses to illustrate his points.
It's fascinating how Clear connects making habits satisfying to our brain's reward system. He dives into dopamine, which is often called the feel-good neurotransmitter.
Oh, okay. So dopamine is involved when we experience pleasure, right? Like
Yeah,
eating a delicious meal or achieving a goal.
exactly. And this ties directly into habits, because when we experience something pleasurable, our brains release dopamine, and that reinforces the behavior. It makes us more likely to repeat it.
So if I eat a cookie and it makes me feel good, my brain's like, hey, let's do that again.
Precisely. But here's the challenge. Our brains haven't fully caught up to our modern world. Our ancestors evolved in an environment where immediate rewards were essential for survival.
Right, if they didn't find food or shelter quickly, they were in trouble.
Exactly. But today, many of the things we strive for, like a successful career, financial security, good health, all of those require delayed gratification. And that goes against our natural wiring.
So we're constantly battling this urge for instant gratification, even when we know it's not in our long-term best interest. That explains a lot.
It does, and that's why Clear emphasizes the importance of making good habits satisfying. We need to find ways to make those delayed rewards more appealing to our present-minded brains. One way he suggests doing this is by adding a bit of immediate pleasure to habits that pay off in the long run.
Okay, so it's like finding a way to bridge that gap between the effort and the reward. Do you have any examples of how to do that?
He gives a great example of this couple who wanted to save for a trip to Europe. They decided to cut back on eating out, and then they would reward themselves with a $50 deposit into their trip to Europe savings account every time they cooked at home.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. It makes saving money more tangible and enjoyable. You're not just denying yourself something, you're actively working towards a rewarding experience.
Exactly. They found a way to inject immediate gratification into a long-term goal. And on the flip side, Clear also talks about making bad habits unsatisfying.
Okay, but how do we do that without resorting to extreme measures like a habit contract with punishments?
Well, there are less intense but still effective ways. One is to leverage accountability. Simply telling a friend or family member about your goals and asking them to hold you accountable can make a big difference.
Oh, it's like having a built-in support system.
Exactly. Knowing that someone is checking in on your progress can be a powerful motivator to stay on track. And it introduces a social element to habit formation.
Speaking of social influence, Clear also talks about the importance of our environment, right? It's not just about our physical surroundings, but the people we surround ourselves with.
He does. He emphasizes that we're heavily influenced by the norms of our culture and the behaviors of those around us. He calls this the close, the many, and the powerful.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for us.
The close refers to the people we're closest to, our family and friends. Our early habits are often shaped by what we observe in our families. If your parents were health conscious, you're more likely to develop healthy habits yourself.
That makes sense. And the many would be our broader social circles and cultural norms. Like, if everyone in your neighborhood is into running, you might be more inclined to start running too.
Exactly. We tend to conform to what's considered normal in our environment. And then there's the powerful. These are the individuals or groups we admire or aspire to be like.
So we might imitate the habits of successful people because we assume those habits contributed to their success.
Precisely. We see their accomplishments, and we think, if they do that, maybe I should too.
So our social environment can either support or sabotage our efforts to build better habits. That's a powerful insight.
It is, and it highlights the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who embody the habits and values we want to cultivate.
So if you want to start reading more, joining a book club might be a good idea.
Exactly. Or finding a workout buddy if you're trying to get in shape. The shared accountability and support can make a huge difference. And this ties back to making habits satisfying. Because when we're part of a supportive community, it makes the journey more enjoyable.
It's like we're wired for connection.
We are. And this social aspect can be a powerful motivator in habit formation.
So we've talked about the role of dopamine, making habits enjoyable, the influence of our environment, and the importance of social support. Clear also dives into the role of genetics, right?
He does. He explains that while genes don't determine our destiny, they do influence our predispositions and areas of natural talent.
So instead of trying to be good at everything, we should focus on developing habits that leverage our strength, kind of like playing to our natural advantages.
Exactly. He uses the example of Michael Phelps, whose physique was practically designed for swimming. His long torso and large wingspan gave him a natural advantage in the pool.
Makes sense. We all have certain strengths and weaknesses. It's about finding what we're naturally good at and focusing our efforts there.
Precisely. And he doesn't suggest that we should just ignore our weaknesses, but rather that we should play a game where the odds are in our favor.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off needing to be good at everything. We can focus on our strengths and then work on improving our weaknesses from a position of strength.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important concept, the Goldilocks rule.
Okay, remind me, what's the Goldilocks rule all about?
It's the idea that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are just the right level of difficulty. Not too easy, not too hard.
Like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We need to find the porridge that's just right.
Exactly. Tasks that are too easy become boring, while tasks that are too difficult can lead to frustration and overwhelm. The sweet spot is somewhere in the middle, challenging enough to keep us engaged, but not so difficult that we feel defeated.
So how do we find that sweet spot? How do we know if a habit is too easy, too hard, or just right?
Clear suggests paying attention to how you feel. When you're engaging in the habit, does it feel effortless and enjoyable? Do you lose track of time? Or do you feel a sense of resistance or dread?
That's a great point. We can learn a lot from tuning in to our own internal cues.
We can. And if a habit feels too easy, you can always increase the challenge. If it feels too hard, you break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
So it's all about finding that balance between pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone and making sure we're setting ourselves up for success.
Precisely. And remember, what feels challenging today might feel easy in a few months. As you develop your skills and build your confidence, the key is to keep adjusting and adapting as you progress.
This whole idea of the Goldilocks rule makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that sweet spot of challenge that keeps us motivated and engaged.
It is. And Clear also emphasizes the importance of showing up consistently, even when we don't feel like it.
So it's not about waiting for motivation to strike, it's about doing the work, even when it's hard.
Exactly. He shares a great anecdote from an elite coach who said that the difference between the best athletes and everyone else is the ability to handle the boredom of training day after day.
So it's about discipline and consistency, not just passion and excitement.
Precisely. Professionals stick to the schedule, amateurs let life get in the way.
And Clear suggests embracing boredom to a certain extent. That might sound strange, but he makes a good point about how variable rewards, like those found in social media, can be addictive.
He does. Those random bursts of excitement keep us hooked, even if the overall experience is fairly mundane.
So we need to be mindful of the things that trigger those dopamine hits and make sure we're not just chasing novelty at the expense of our long-term goals.
Exactly. And finding that balance between consistency and novelty can be tricky, but it's worth striving for.
This whole conversation is making me reevaluate my approach to habit formation. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. The science, the psychology, the practical strategies.
It is a complex puzzle, but Atomic Habits provides a framework for understanding how it all works.
It does. But before we move on, I'm curious to hear about a specific example from the book that really stood out to you. What really made you think, wow, I need to try that?
One example that resonated with me was the story of a man who wanted to break his habit of eating junk food. Instead of trying to rely on willpower alone, he changed his environment to make it harder to indulge.
So did he, banish all the junk food from his house?
He did. He got rid of all the chips, cookies, and sugary drinks and replaced them with healthy options like fruits, vegetables, and nuts. He also stopped driving by his favorite fast food restaurants on his way home from work.
So he made it harder to access the unhealthy options and easier to reach for the healthy ones. It's like setting yourself up for success by removing temptation.
Exactly. And Clear emphasizes that even small changes in our environment can have a big impact on our behavior.
That's a powerful reminder. What about you? Is there a particular example or strategy that resonated with you?
One strategy that really resonated with me was habit stacking. It just seems like such a simple and effective way to build new habits by leveraging existing ones.
It's a clever strategy, and it really highlights the importance of being mindful of our current routines and how we can use them to our advantage.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredibly enlightening dive into the practical side of Atomic Habits. We've explored strategies for making habits more satisfying, breaking bad habits, and the importance of environment and social influence.
We've also touched on the fascinating interplay of genes, talent, and the Goldilocks rule, which emphasizes the importance of finding the right level of challenge to stay motivated. And of course, we can't forget the importance of showing up consistently, even when we don't feel like it.
Absolutely. Consistency is key when it comes to building lasting habits. In our final segment, we'll explore some of the deeper implications of Atomic Habits, including the power of reflection and continuous improvement. We'll also delve into Clear's insights on how our identities can both help and hinder our progress.
So we've covered a lot of ground, like the science of habits, the power of our environment, and those social influences. But Clear doesn't just give us the theory, he encourages us to, actually try all this stuff out and then reflect on what's working.
That's one of the things I like most about Atomic Habits. It's not just a one-time read, it's a guide for ongoing self-improvement. Clear emphasizes that. Habit formation is a process of experimentation and refinement.
So treating our habits as an ongoing experiment. We try things out, see what sticks, and, adjust as we go.
Exactly. And Clear even suggests incorporating a system of deliberate practice, similar to what elite athletes and musicians use. It's about being intentional, pushing beyond your comfort zone, and seeking feedback to continually improve.
That's powerful. So it's not just about mindless repetition. It's about, focused effort and a commitment to getting better, one step at a time.
Precisely. And this process of deliberate practice can be incredibly rewarding. As we master new skills and see ourselves improving, our brains release dopamine, creating that sense of satisfaction and motivation to keep going.
So the pursuit of mastery itself becomes the reward, not just the outcome, but the journey of growth and improvement.
Exactly. And this highlights a key message from Atomic Habits. The goal isn't to achieve some arbitrary endpoint, but to create a system of continuous growth. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves, day by day.
That's inspiring. It's not about perfection, but embracing the process of self-discovery and, striving to reach our full potential.
Precisely. But there's another point Clear brings up that I thought was interesting. How our identities can actually become a limitation on our growth.
Okay, I'm curious about this. We talked about how our identities shape our habits, but how can they hold us back?
Well, we can become so attached to a particular identity, like I'm a runner or I'm a writer, that it kind of prevents us from exploring new possibilities or acknowledging our weaknesses.
Oh, so it's like we get stuck in this box of our own making.
Exactly. Clear suggests to break free from these self-imposed limitations, we need to cultivate a growth mindset.
So embrace the idea that we're always evolving, that our identities are not fixed.
Right. It means being willing to step outside of our comfort zones, challenge our beliefs, and experiment with new behaviors, even if they don't perfectly align with our current self-image.
So not clinging to who we think we are, but being open to who we might become, embracing the discomfort that comes with growth.
Exactly. Clear reminds us that the most satisfying and sustainable growth often occurs at the edge of our abilities, back in that Goldilocks zone, where we're challenged but not overwhelmed.
This brings us full circle. It's about pushing ourselves just beyond our current limits, but recognizing that those limits are always expanding as we learn and grow.
It does, and it highlights a key principle of Atomic Habits, the process of building better habits. It's not about achieving perfection, but about continually striving to become the best version of ourselves.
We've covered so much in this deep dive into Atomic Habits. It's such an insightful and practical book with so many strategies for building better habits and reaching our goals.
I completely agree. It's one I know I'll come back to again and again.
Me too. Before we wrap up, I want to highlight one final thought from the book that really stuck with me. Clear reminds us that even small changes, consistently applied, can have a remarkable impact over time.
That's the power of the compound effect. Like compound interest, small improvements accumulate and build upon each other, leading to exponential growth.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that we don't need to make drastic changes to see results. We can start small, focus on consistency, and trust the process.
It's about taking those small steps, day after day, and letting the compound effect do its magic.
So as we go on this journey of building better habits, let's be intentional about the direction of those habits. Are they aligned with our values, our goals, and our vision for the future?
That's so important. We can have all the good habits in the world, but if they're not moving us toward a life that is meaningful and fulfilling, they won't bring us to happiness.
So as you think about the habits you want to build or break, ask yourself, are these habits helping me become the person I want to be?
That's a great question to reflect on. And remember, this process of self-improvement is a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, embrace the challenges, and celebrate your progress along the way.
Well said. And thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of habits. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. We'll see you next time for another exploration of your source material. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building those atomic habits